Yes. Shout out to everybody that's tuning in. We're about to have us a nice, intimate conversation about Black masculinity, malehood, maleness, and really just about the things that we've learned. You feel me? About being masculine, being manly, and how that gets us to relate to other people in the Black community and throughout the world. But this conversation is gonna be filtered through a Black lens about masculinity. Before we get in, I acknowledge there are going to be things that we couch into Black masculinity that may apply to other forms of masculinity. It does not negate no point that either I or Professor Odie has made in terms of talking about Black masculinity. I want to be clear on that. We're going to make a lot of claims. We're couching this conversation from the experience and perspective as Black men. There will be things inevitably that we say that we are talking through a purely Black lens on that's also going to apply to other men. Please do not be obtuse in no way. You feel me? In doing this. Hold on. Why I ain't seeing no comments? Can y'all? Hey, let me know. Let me see. Can y'all see the comment? Let me know. Let me figure out what's going on with the comment section. Why am I not seeing any comments? Let's see what's going on. Can somebody make a comment? Hold on. I don't. We good. I'm about to say whoa. You see the comments now? Yeah. So any disclaimers you want to give, you know what I'm saying, before we jump into this?
Me specifically, any disclaimers?
Anything you want to say before we get into it? Cause I know from the conversation we had earlier, once we start going, shout to Chaz Bruce, we're gonna really be going. You feel me? And acknowledging too, one of the first things I learned as a Black man was that it was to be dominated or to dominate. And I acknowledge that concept of me being stuck in that binary on whether I'm going to be the Black man that's going to be dominated by the other Black man I'm around, or I'm going to be doing the dominating. I think that was one of the first survival tactics that I learned once I jumped off that porch. You feel me? And I acknowledge that it's usually the types of individuals that really don't have a lot of different experience and kind of quote unquote jumping off the porch. You see what I'm saying? That makes a lot of these rigid claims about being high value, about being a real man, about being an alpha male. And I've acknowledged that there is a constant stream that's implicated. And I'll just leave it at that. We're going to unpackage that more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So first and foremost, to answer your question about disclaimers, nah, I really don't have any, man. You already know how I get down. G. Like, I speak what I speak, I mean what I say when I say it, and we just gonna go from there, right? That's one. And also two, as you said previously, we're couching this conversation from the perspective of Black men, but we are also two Black men who are having this conversation, right? So when we're looking at this from this perspective of, once again, the rigidities of masculinity that we tend to see, that we tend to perceive, these rigidities are one of many types of ways that masculinity can manifest. It's one of many types of ways that masculinity can be expressed. But when we're once again talking about this flow, or when we're talking about this this almost like miasma that exists within this space of masculinity that people do not want to call toxic. But the reality of the situation is, when we talk to men about how it is that a lot of their masculinity exists, or where a lot of their masculinity exists, it usually exists in spaces of conflict, as you said, domination or anger, right? Yeah. So how much of your masculinity can you really be expressing in a healthy way if it does not exist in a nexus that's healthy, or the root is not healthy, or the soil is not healthy?
But what you made me think of is this video I'm now looking for to be able to show to the people of this guy making this wonderful analysis, and I feel like you're gonna be able to add on to it before I show the video and find it. But what he did was simply point out that the reason why a lot of men in the big picture, outside, I guess in this instance, outside of race, but how men have higher levels of unaliving ourselves due to how we adhere to gender roles. And I think that it's something specific that can be added more texture on with you and I from talking about it from this Black masculine, you know what I'm saying, lens and standpoint. But yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
So as a clinician, I want to be very careful about how it is that I navigate this conversation, right?
Ooh.
Because when we're talking about this idea of unaliving or being in that space where you want to engage in that type of self-harm, it is usually at the nexus of helplessness, hopelessness, and an overwhelming fear or an overwhelming disdain or despair, right? So when we look at this from that perspective, that is not a space where, you know, an individual usually finds themselves. That's a space that usually either A, develops over time from environmental feedback, or B, exists also as a function or a factor of a neurobiological, a neurobiological imbalance, right? Either way, there is an effort that is placed in recollecting these things or, you know, healing these things in order for you to stop having or feeling this ailment. With that as the foundation to my response, we have to understand how it is that Black men identify their self-worth in a lot of different situations. So I'm reading We Real Cool by Bell Hooks, and it's a book about Black masculinity, right?
Yeah.
In the book, she talks about how it is that Black men exchanged their self-worth from love to money. And with that exchange, the internalization of the belief that your worth is only attached to how much money you make increased the nihilism, or it increased the ability for other things to take hold. So when you have this environment where, once again, it is profit over person, you are more likely to engage in, once again, spaces of either violence or spaces of domination, control, competition. When you are not able to participate in these things, or when you believe that as an individual, this is truly not how it is that you resonate with the environment, because you do not have spaces of relief, or because you do not have spaces of support, you become self-removing. It is easier to withdraw, or it is easier to remove than to engage. Why? Because engagement is constant rejection.
And we got one from you too, Professor Odie, that asked, what's that book again for you to tell me?
Oh, the book is called We Real Cool.
We Real Cool by Black Masculinity. No, we so cool, right? No, it's we so
no,
cool.
We
Right?
Real Cool.
We real cool. We real cool. We real cool. But what you just said, it takes us really beautifully into this to this thing right here, man. Feel free to tell me to pause if it's some shit we got to do it, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say about this. And I think that this video right here, we're gonna have to do our jobs of contextualizing it into the uniqueness of Black men and Black masculinity. But I think that it still gives us an overview of what I just said.
Pop quiz. Did you know that there is a connection between this idea that women should be subservient to men in society and male suicide rates being through the roof? Can you guess what the connection might be?
I'm actually going to answer this in a way that I've never done before, and that's by reading something from a book that I guarantee you like 99% of people watching this video haven't read, meaning it's not going to be Bell Hooks, unfortunately. It's actually this one, Men's Liberation, A New Definition of Masculinity, which was published in 1975, which explains why mine doesn't have a cover and why there's 10 left on Amazon. Also, I know the name Men's Liberation sounds kind of weird, but it was actually a social movement in the 60s and 70s that was very focused on how societal norms and gender roles for men were not only oppressive and hurtful for women, but they were the same for men as well, like a very Bell Hooks, patriarchy hurts us all type vibe. And actually in the very first chapter, he talks about why men have such a high self-unaliving rate, and he explains that's in big part because they can't live up to the societal expectations that have been given to them, but ironically...
Oh man, so far, if I press play, so far, as a Black man that also has an expertise in being a clinician, so far, so good. How do you feel about the analysis so far?
It's cracking, right? Because once again, this man is assumedly talking about, how can I say this? Overculture masculinity. the masculinity that exists in the general population. Once again, we still have to add the layer of blackness onto this.
Hold on before you get to the blackness. I know, because I know that when you hear more of it, it's gonna make it a little smoother to be able to account for it all.
One of those societal expectations or roles has been the rational male that doesn't look inwards to question why he just accepts all these societal roles in the first place. Where he says ever so eloquently, and don't worry, my head will be your finger reader, masculine roles and praise for rational use of the intellect are based on values that are at the bottom of our culture's way of perceiving. When these roles are cumbersome, it is difficult for men to discern that they are so because rigid thought patterns cast shadows across their minds. The adjusted male does not appreciate his predicament. It is so ingrained in the way he uses his everyday mind that he takes it for granted. The tensions that account for the fact that men comprise by far the greater number of successful self-unalivings are simply seen as life's tough facts, which men in particular must be tough enough to quote-unquote handle or must succumb to in the process. Loss or defeat are equated with abject failure, a condition that robs a man of his status in his own eyes. At the time of the great 1929 crash, many Wall Street tycoons jumped from skyscrapers, equating their loss of status with utter subjugation.
Hey, you know, that part of what he's talking about right now is something that I covered in my live yesterday with the article dealing with Roe, the woman that was hit by the brick.
Mm-hmm.
And what they got into is that there's a lot of black men that are frustrated with our status and with our professional success, specifically when it comes to what we feel like we should have in this post-Obama structure, this post-Obama era. And we acknowledge that black women are being, in many people's perception, politically, socially, economically represented more than black men. That's causing a lot of resentment amongst, you feel me, heterosexual black men, black women type of conversations and relations. I want to throw that in there right now. This, you know what I'm saying, before I let Professor, I know, let me tell y'all something. This man's from that side of Chicago, not South Chicago, West Chicago.
West side.
West side, you don't even say it like that. My bad. West side Chicago. You don't say West side Chicago. So the reason why I wanted to have a conversation with him specifically, and us want to have this conversation together, is because we acknowledge that we come from a particular social and economic background, the hood, that makes it where we have a different experience and position in terms of being a black man, in terms of how we understand our masculinity. You see what I'm saying? And what I know from talking to Professor Odie, when he's able to take his expertise of what he learned in the classroom, the experiences that he got from West Side of Chicago and all this, it allows for us to have a very well-rounded conversation that's not just situated in academia and theory and shit, but experience, you feel me? Material reality, you feel me? How niggas really situated, not only in the hood, you feel what I'm saying? Not only in the black community, but thinking about how black people are structured throughout the world, talking about black masculine or masculinity structured throughout the world. But still, again, this video is through this lens.
From the standpoint of an objective outsider, a self-unaliving committed because of some monetary overthrow has its origin in the unalive man's erroneous presumptions about his daily requirements. Such presumptions are difficult to change because they are derived from customary ways of thinking about thinking. Few men go so far as to question thought methods themselves. They inherit those bestowed upon them by their environment. To use the mind to turn inward on itself is a task for professionals. Sounds like a job for a shrink, said a clergyman to me when I suggested that he assist his congregation in this kind of inner exploration. As is true of most men, he was all too ready to classify what he must or must not do on the basis of prescribed functions alone, a sign of poverty of imagination. Now, if you've made it this far in the video, I genuinely want you to think about the irony behind this whole idea, where a lot of men believe in this archetype of the rational and logical male that is inherent to men by nature. And they only believe in that because society has told them so, like they didn't come to that conclusion on their own. And the irony there is that a man that fits that archetype of being intellectual and logical and rational would never believe in something like that simply because society told him so. Also, I'm too brain fried right now from med school to know if that's more ironic or paradoxical, so genuinely let me know.
Take it away. Take it away. I know you got it. The floor is yours, brethren. The floor is yours, brethren.
Oh my God. Okay. So to answer his question before we start the long form answer, I believe it's paradoxical, right? For Black men, it's deeply paradoxical because with Black men, I feel like a lot of times we are not fighting to build towards the ideal man. We are fighting to not be perceived as the savage man, or we are fighting to not be perceived as a man who is not somebody who is going to cause harm, cause dismay, or cause disarray, right? The reason why I say this is because when we have this conversation, a lot of men will say, what about the good that we do, right? A lot of Black men will say, what about the good that we do? What about the things that we do to benefit the society, to benefit the community? And I'm not saying that these things do not exist, right? What I'm saying is that why is that the response when we are talking about what it is that we need to improve upon, right? So that's the first part. The second part of this idea of men not being able to question or not being able to break away from these prescribed methods of masculinity is in a lot of ways. Oh, I thought that was my phone, G. In a lot of ways,
I ain't got it on. Do not stir. My bad.
you're good, bro. You good. But in a lot of ways, it's associated with this idea of, once again,
Shout out to you, Margot. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Performative masculinity instead of understanding one's purpose, right? So you are only doing what it is that you are told to do because you only understand yourself as an extension of, once again, a performance. You don't understand yourself as self. So when you do not meet this performance, and with Black men, when you don't even get access to the stage, right? When you do not have the ability to keep the lights on, to keep people in seats, to keep the maintenance in the theater in order for you to have this performance, immediately you begin to question, once again, your self-worth. You begin to question your ability to continue to maintain a performance that, once again, you do not have access to fully perform. On the flip side of that, if we attempt to engage in alternative masculine structures, a lot of times we don't have the space or support to facilitate this alternative masculinity because by conservative Black male ideologies, what that means is that you're not being a man. If you do not exist in this rigidity, you do not exist as a masculine at all. You do not exist as a capable masculine at all. So either you are going to suffer under this type of capability structure, or the structure or lack thereof that you exist within is invalidated. It is a lose-lose situation as it relates to, once again, achieving an ideal self that has nothing to do with performing for others, but more to do with finding and rooting purpose in the self.
Definitely. And it makes me realize that at a young age, I became, I think, very unapologetic about how I did not meet the traditional standards of being masculine or being a man, and I just let it go. Me and you, when we was talking earlier, I was telling you about the idea that I feel like it's not only in my hood, Bryan, Texas, but I feel like in a lot of, you know what I'm saying, Black communities, that a lot of us Black men will call each other friendly, and that is supposed to be a slight and a negotiation of one's masculinity that warrants a fight to prove that you are man enough, quote unquote, to not be friendly. To me, I think that from a masculinity standpoint, when we talk about how we give each other accolades and how we give each other flowers, I think that a lot of notions of dick riding, or a lot of notions of, you feel me, trying to jump on a train, makes it where there's not even ways for us to have care and love and affirmation for each other, because it's so tied into how we can't be perceived friendly, which could one way or another literally make it where we now start to interrogate and negotiate my manhood. If a nigga negotiating your manhood, it's time to fight. You see what I'm saying? And I know that being in social media now, you feel me? Black men, we would say, hey, I'm trying to get like you. Damn, bro, say somebody for me. See what I'm saying? those gonna be the ways that we affirm each other. And I think that it's situated around the fragileness of us being able to affirm each other because it's so situated in domination. You feel me? Unless it's at the expense of women.
Oh yeah.
Unless, that's what I've learned. I've learned that we can give each other straight up affirmation, straight up, like, hey, bro, you did that shit right there. Typically, when it's at the expense of black women, you know what I'm saying? We being real.
Once again, like I said earlier, I might fuck you up. I may not fuck you up. But once again, I don't believe it's just at the expense of black women. I believe that we as black men have been blinded to see how it is that we harm ourselves through our interactions, right? So have you ever noticed that a lot of black men begin their disagreements with disrespect, or begin their disagreements with negation or minimization, or begin their disagreements with dehumanization? It is usually a, once again, of the person attack, right? I can't pull the Latin phrase right now, but it's an attack of the person, right? You're not engaging with the idea. You are attempting to demean me. Black men measure our ability to be friendly with one another based upon our capacity to disrespect one another without response.
Facts. Sadly. And it makes me think of that Nipsey Hussle interview I seen when he talked about when people is banging in many different instances, or when we having conflicts with each other as black men, a lot of it comes from the internalization of black inferiority because we looking for us. We looking, Nipsey Hussle said, I'm here in LA. Very diverse place. He's looking, you feel me, to target and looking at the individuals that he gonna possibly wage violence against that look like him. And before we be clear, because I got a video coming out that I'm really happy about, that's gonna be very good, called African Booty Scratching and Diaspora Wars. And Professor Odie, when we was talking, he said something that was very profound that a lot of us know that I think that we should acknowledge right now. And I'll make my point. The thing that, you know what I'm saying, he said that was very profound is that a lot of us in America, black folks, we used to always already having to perform or resist the white gaze, the white eyes, the white perception. And what I acknowledge as a black man that has a big platform that's being very critical about black masculinity, I can acknowledge there could be individuals that can take what I'm talking about and try to fold it into a pathology of black on black crime, or fold it into a pathology that justifies policing and justifies black people as being seen as hyper violent and not being able to control our emotions. You see what I'm saying? In saying that, I'm acknowledging that all of conflict is always based in proximity, and 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to beef with somebody, I'm going to beef with somebody that's inside of my community, and I'm not finna go to the white community to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't want to allow for anybody to take my words and use them for pathological ways to justify crazy, wild, anti-black predispositions about black people, black men, particularly always wanting to harm each other, kill each other, that and the other. You know what I'm saying? This conversation, however, is a very real, transparent one about the various implications that both I, Professor Odie, and things we've read in terms of masculinity. I just want to make sure, and I want to give you credit for it too, but I recognize that consciously and unconsciously, I'm always thinking about how I'm being perceived, because I acknowledge that if I'm perceived the wrong way as a black man, that my freedom or my life could be in danger any moment. I don't give a damn how many followers I got. I don't give a damn how much money I got. I don't give a damn how many degrees I got. I don't give a damn how many awards I've been. I don't care about none of that. My black body will always perceive that. And I understand as a black man, you see what I'm saying? That's how that go. Hey, Olympic Daisy, we gonna do a part 2, definitely. And I'm a holler at Big Bro for sure, because I definitely know he'll be able to. You know FD, don't you? Yeah, I definitely, you know what I'm saying? He would have been amazing in this conversation. But don't take it away though.
All right, so responding to the white gaze, or, you know, reacting to the white gaze as a black man, how can I say this? It's a type of pressure that, because we as black men do not necessarily engage in emotional regulation, that is related to having to carry this weight it becomes anger, resentment, fear, discouragement. It becomes an internalization of, once again, a lack of self-worth. Because these people consistently perceive me this way, me behaving in any other way, if it puts a threat to my livelihood or to my freedom, I will no longer be able to assert myself in this way. Right. So I was having a conversation. I forget what conversation I was having, but in that conversation, I said, yo, Black men asserting their masculinity in any other way outside of, once again, what it is that the white gaze identifies as Black masculinity is a threat to the white power structure.
Oh God.
Because the middle, the crux and the root of the white power structure is literally based upon the dehumanization of Black men. And then the dehumanization of Black women, right? So we're looking at this dynamic in such a way where Black men are internalizing this idea en masse that in a lot of different ways, I have to offset this dehumanization, right? Or I have to align myself with the white gaze so that I'm not perceived as a threat. And one of the ways that we align with the white gaze is, once again, emulating white Anglo-Saxon Protestant nucleic family values in such a way where we as men assert ourselves as the leader or the head of something without, once again, doing what is necessary in order to get ourselves to that point. Now, why is that relevant in this particular situation? Because when we are not able to facilitate that, once again, if we are not skilled in emotional regulation, the parts of our masculinity, or the parts of masculinity, once again, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant masculinity, that says if we do not have the financial way to dominate, we can dominate in physical or mental ways. Thanks. We can literally punish or control through physical means. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm able to carry more, I'm able to do more. It's easily accessible. Why? Because once again, it's an extension of the performance of masculinity that we are used to. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to be violent. You are allowed this route. But the route that is not allowed to you, or the route that is not extended to you, is the route of regulation. It's the route of peace. It's the route of validation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the dynamics that exist within that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it makes it where we recognize that there are different ways that we can mobilize ourselves as Black men if we buy into what the mainstream white world has told us about who can be exposable and disposable in our community, and how us being able to stand on their backs, you feel me, or stand on top of them literally allows for us to be able to catapult ourselves, or allow for us to be able to be in an upward position. And what I've seen from being on the internet now is that there is I've said it before, but I think that there is a alt-right white supremacist pipeline that's being opened up to Black men uniquely based off of these different rigid ideas of masculinity, of freedom versus survivability or mobility. You know what I'm saying? There's something also that Professor Odie said that y'all should make sure, hey, this video I'm making right now about diaspora wars, Professor Odie was in his spitting, you know what I'm saying? And something that he said that's coming to, I think that's very relevant right now, is that this concept between survivability and freedom, and how, you know, when we first got here in the Americas, a lot of the African enslaved peoples was really frustrating and negotiating survivability, and how a lot of the newly enslaved Africans that was born in Africa came over, they were situated in freedom. I think that us as Black men, a lot of us are situated always already with fighting with those two things. You see what I'm saying? When Black men are talking about putting ourselves in a line of fire for Black women, we're acknowledging at that moment that it's about self-preservation. You see what I'm saying? And a lot of them is saying like, hey, if I see a Black woman get hit with a brick and they ain't got nothing to do with me, there's no reason for me to put myself in that line of fire, because I risk too much. You see what I'm saying? At that moment, my survivability is much more important than everybody else's, and I don't care about freedom. You know what I mean? I'm not situated with that at all. I think that becomes the very pathological way that we get trapped in as Black men and make it where we start to do what I know in my hood and how I was raised. It was literally like, hey man, bitch activities is you being a grown man, and you are arguing with women about particular things. You see what I'm saying? And so it's like I recognize there's a notion that when you start using language like that, it's very hyper masculine, and that could warrant, you feel me, different types of macho man type shit. But I'm acknowledging, however, regardless of that, see that the reality is that a lot of us are taught that, and we're still in our adult life trying to negotiate with it, and the contradiction of simping or pandering not being extended to men that are able to sit around and create trauma bonds amongst ourselves to be able to get more validation and more affirmation from other men.
I agree 100%. 1,000%. Like I say it a lot too, like, yo, men pander to other men. I've said it before. Men will pander to other men. If that pandering allows them the community, or gives them the community that gives them the, not necessarily the emotional support, but the enabling in order for them to continue to stew themselves in the sourness without resolving that emotional disposition, then by all means, a man will pay the same way that these motherfuckers will say, oh, you pandering to these women in order to get pussy. You are pandering to these men in order to get company, in order to get camaraderie. Because once again, you have not learned how to engage in collaborative communication enough for you to create truly fruitful friendships and truly fruitful relationships. So the relationships,
Margo, I appreciate you for this.
The relationships that you furnish are always in spaces of transaction that is situated at the base and the binary of domination and submission. You are either taking control or you are being taken control of.
That's it.
I either have the freedom of movement or I have to suffer the survivability of being bound to, whether it be a commitment, whether it be a transition, whether it be the other end of a transaction. I'm bound to something. But either way, if this is something that is not regulated, or if this is something that is not checked, I'm not saying that you can't be mad, brother. I'm not saying that you can't be upset. I'm not saying that you cannot have that experience, but you discharging or you projecting, like, nah, that's your responsibility.
Facts. And to add on to that, I think that because when we're growing up as boys, we taught from a very young age what types of emotions are good and legitimate for us to be able to express, and which ones is unboyly, unmanly. You feel me? I think it makes it where when we become adults and we have to grapple with different emotions that we've been discouraged from expressing, it makes it where I think that we have internal fights with ourselves, because it's like, hey, I've been told I'm not supposed to experience hurt in this way.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told I'm not supposed to experience abandonment this way, or I'm not supposed to experience loneliness in this way because I'm a man. I'm supposed to have possessions, whether it's a woman or an object or fucking what's the difference? See what I'm saying? I acknowledge that because there are so many ways that we're taught to almost ignore emotions, it makes it hard for us to, I think, as adults, as men, you feel me, as grown as men, to really be able to express to specifically Black women, or women in real large, but specifically Black women, how we feel hurt or how we feel let down. And I think that it usually comes in packaged in misogyny. You see what I'm saying? It usually comes very packaged in like some very vile, wild, anti-woman shit. And it allows for, last thing is like for niggas to be able to create man hating spaces and places of pandering and simping for man at the expense of non-man or weaker man to be able to do it. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And it's just like the that's me as an intellectual. The nigga in me always makes me think about how the usual type of dudes that talk about simping and pandering, it's like, hey, if you came to where I was born and raised, or you went to a place like I was born and raised, not only would you be seen as a sucker simp square, the things you prescribe as simping and pandering, it wouldn't be like that as how you think it is.
Somebody in the comments said that a lot of our men are doing a lot of blaming on Black women these days. I want to be relatively nuanced with that point. But I do want to make this point, though. Lee, everything that you just said is the reason why Black men have that blame response. It's not that I do not always believe that it is Black men blaming Black women for their position. What I believe is that it is Black men pushing against Black women, reminding them that they were not rewarded with the things that the patriarchy said that they were going to be rewarded with. So why are you continuing to hold on to this masculinity as if though it has returns on investments? If it does, where are they for you? En masse. Where are your returns on this investment for internalizing this idea? So really, if you are really the king of the jungle, where's your pride? If you are really the person that you say that you are, show me the money. Where is it? If it is not here,
with a castle, with a village.
There we go. Right.
Yeah.
And even still, even if you are able to furnish these things, that's fine. That's okay. The fact that this woman also has something that is similar or greater burns you, because in your mind, you have been taught that, once again, in order for me to lead, or in order for me to be the person who is once again fulfilling this role, I have to have the lion's share. But the lion's share is brought to the male lion by the women or the female lions that do the hunting. So really, what is the lion's share? Is it only gotten by you, or is it a collaborative effort that makes sure that everybody gets fed?
Yeah. 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 I don't even know, like, I think that right now, a lot of us are suffering from individualism. And it makes it where we can weaponize our individual accolades and success against one another. And I think we lock ourselves into that notion of productivity, where that's how we're trying to prove our manhood and our humanity. And I think that's what makes this conversation, I think, a little unique to Black masculinity. I acknowledge that we all live in a capitalistic world and we all stuck at, you know what I'm saying, being workers. But I acknowledge that Black people as a whole, we have a different relationship to labor and having our labor being valued. And I acknowledge as a Black man that a lot of us, shit, my daddy to this day, my grandfather, you feel me, and the man I grew up around, and even me now, I've learned and inherited how my labor, it's not valued this way that I feel like it should. And when you was talking and you talked about how there are the blame game happens when kind of Black men, we feel as if Black women are saying like, man, if you don't reach it this way, then why you still holding on to it? And it reminded me of how a lot of Black women are having this knee-jerk reaction to a lot of biological Black women talking about trans women. And I acknowledge that this is the same cathartic relationship that us Black men are having. We have a legacy of being denied manhood and masculinity. There is a structural history of us as Black men being denied the notion of manhood. And I think that anytime we feel like somebody is trying to deny us of our manhood or negotiate us, you know what I'm saying, our manhood, I think that we have a very violent response.
Yeah, we have a trauma response. Oh, the idea of criticizing Black masculinity being equivalent to dehumanizing or harming a Black man in totality is very much so a trauma response.
Oh yeah.
Because once again, we do not have a intermediary, or we do not have a median for the criticism of the Black man. It is very much so, or we believe that we don't have an archetype for that. It is, once again, it's a binary. If you are not a Black man who exists in one way, you are automatically existing in the other way. So, for example, a number of Black men believe that this conversation about showing up in relationships or being present in relationships or doing things is about money. Like, the conversation always comes back to money. And I'm just like, yo, are y'all listening to what these women are saying to you? Are you really listening? It's not about money. It's about being emotionally present and being able to fulfill particular roles and duties that have absolutely nothing to do with, once again, this patriarchal performance of masculinity, right? So once again, when we are talking about this from this perspective of how are we constructing masculinity outside of the masculinity that was prescribed to or given to us by, once again, white slave owners. Black men do not like admitting the fact that most of our masculinity was given to or beaten into us by white men. We do not like having that conversation. We don't. Yes. Go ahead and listen.
And what you saying to me is a direct link to what this comment I have pinned up right now.
Mm-hmm.
This comment says, then Black manhood is feminized in the media and into children cartoons to push a narrative of sexuality on the youth. I'm sure you and I disagree, but I acknowledge that this is one of the very normalized sentiments in our community and that we have been taught to worry about as Black men, is that there's always a attack on our masculinity in a way to feminize us. And I think that gives anti-Blackness too much credit, and it also causes rhetorical violence, psychological violence, and material violence for feminized Black men. There are feminized Black men that still are very masculine. And I think that a lot of us have a hard time with coming to grips with the nuanced ways in which how Black men can show up. And I think that because that is so hard for us to do, we are able to fall into this idea of the gay agenda, and the gay agenda, quote unquote, trying to feminize us specifically for children and trying to feminize this, that, and the other. You know what I'm saying? And I think that really makes it where it's a hierarchy. You feel me? I started this live by saying, as a Black man, the first thing I learned that it was to be dominated or to dominate. The second thing I learned was that the more feminine you performed or presented yourself, the more that deemed rational for you to be dominated. The idea of feminization of masculinity in terms of Blackness, it's always been an ideal for white supremacy to literally fuck us up because we are inherently seen as being non-normative men, and many instances seen as being inherently feminized men. A lot of times we start talking about like the welfare queen and talking about this, that, and the other. The Morningham Report, it was written in, I think, the 1960s by Lyndon B. Johnson's, you feel me, presidency. And his thing, what he was trying to do was figure out what is the issue with the Negro community. And the conclusion he came with is that the Black community is fucked up. It's because it's being ran by women. This created a pathology that literally justified this idea of feminization. In this idea that the reason why the Black community is fucked up is because not only are the Black men feminized, or actually say the other way, not only are the women, quote unquote, leading households and communities, but the men are feminized. This is a fallacy that's always been placed on the man, and I'm acknowledging it's to be dominated or to dominate. So your proximity that you have with terms of femininity is going to be always based off of the other man you're in proximity with. There are certain areas in terms of masculine spaces and places seen as, you feel me, really, really masculine. There are other spaces and places that me as a Black man, how I show up, I'm seeing as being much more feminized. The reason I'm giving this analysis because I'm acknowledging that it's really based off of proximity, and it's never always absolute. You're always more masculine and more feminine compared to who. And just the last thing I'll say on this, you know what I'm saying, specifically, right, is that this comment right here that is weaponizing the general welfare of children, I usually find that it's being intellectually dishonest, because when we start talking about the signals that's being sent to our kids, specifically our young Black boys, and I see a whole bunch of men arguing on the internet about whether we should protect Black women or not, about whether or not we should be able to meet a certain, if a Black woman doesn't meet a certain criteria to be protected, that's a bitch, that's a hoe, that's a slut, fuck her. So the idea that we should always be worried about what signals we send into the children, and we don't think about how these high value men, low value men, alpha male conversations are sending signals to the children that's literally facilitating violence amongst our children. I think that it's just like respectfully as possible, I feel like it becomes a disingenuous reference to kids.
So it's a couple of different ways I like to approach this conversation, right? In terms of this effeminization of Black men. The first way I like to approach it is, number one, I find it very interesting how it is that we have a range of effeminization, but not a range of emotional intellectualization. I find that to be very odd.
Let them cook, y'all. Let them cook.
I found it to be very odd. How is it that we have a range of how it is that Black men can be effeminized, and yet we do not have an alternative where Black men can be emotionally intellectualized without it being associated with being effeminized? There is no separation. Yet and still, this is the point, or this is the space of underwhelm. The most.
Don't start playing with me now. We having a productive conversation between.
I find it very interesting that the Black men,
they getting down on us, y'all. We having a healthy conversation about Black masculinity between two Black men. Y'all know the internet don't never mess up for me when I'm on here this whole.
Hold on, we gonna wait. There we go. All right, so
right here, where I really be like, God damn, CIA, man, shit.
You feel me? It be the feds.
I ain't trying to. I come in peace. I want no smoke with y'all. We ain't even talking about nothing crazy. We just talking about healthy forms of, you feel me? Y'all talking about all that murder, kill shit. We acknowledging what getting what facilitates that shit, and y'all stopping the conversation, man.
On some fuck shit.
Like,
the second thing that I usually think is real funny is that the same Black men who talk about how it is that, once again, and I said this as well, Black men do not control the narrative that's presented about Black men in media. What people did not hear is that whether that Black man be gay or straight, it doesn't matter. That narrative is still not controlled by Black men. So do you firmly believe, that the way in which gay Black men or Black people in the LGBTQI community, do you believe that their representation in media is completely and totally on the nose every time? Do you believe that they have more influence, Black queer people specifically? Do you believe that they have influence of that narrative? If you believe that the answer is yes, if you believe that Black queer people have more influence over their narrative and their representation in the media than Black straight people do, you are wildly misguided. Wildly.
Not only wild misguided, you need to sip some of that Kool-Aid.
You've been sipping some of the Kool-Aid. The second thing, and the third thing is, once again, the Moynihan report, you're 100% correct. But once again, at the very root of the Moynihan report is two things. One, once again, it is this anti-intellectual and anti-African orientation that allows for somebody to subjugate an entire race and entire culture of people in one fell swoop. You are literally saying that the patriarchy is more valid and it is more healthy than a matriarchy, where there has never been enough evidence to support that claim, ever. You show me a patriarchy that's run better than a matriarchy. You show it to me. Show it to me. Show me the lifespan indicators of this patriarchy that's better than a matriarchy. Show it to me. Right?
I learned when you start making them type of claims, it's that boys claim to be all historically acute and intellectually, you feel me, you know what I'm saying, ready to have those conversations, until you start bringing facts that literally crash the idea of all the traditional things that we've been taught about. Like, what you mean? Christianity told me that I'm supposed to be like Father Abraham, who was a patriarch. The fact that these feminists and these socialists and these feminized panderers is talking about feminism, that or talking about matriarchies, that is a direct threat to the black structure and family structure, because black men are supposed to be patriarchal and X, Y, and Z. And what I've learned, research over me search, that's the motto. What I've learned is that when you do the research, is that a lot of the ways that we understand what it means to be man, how to perform our masculinity, you feel me, the roles of what it means to be a man, the innate ability of how we should be men, all that comes from a particular place. What I learned in college is that word is called epistemology. We all have a particular epistemological understanding of masculinity and manhood. Epistemology, a fancy ass word for knowledge production. That's all it means. You see what I'm saying? And just before this, the question we have to ask ourselves, these are epistemological questions. Epistemology is knowledge production. How do you know what you know? If you believe that boys supposed to wear blue and women wear pink, what is the particular epistemological understanding that taught you that shit? If you believe that women's supposed to stay at home and get the house good and men supposed to go out and hunt, who taught you that shit? If I tell you that gender is a social construct, and I'm able to point out to different times in history that different societies had different constructs of gender, acknowledging their particular West African and even indigenous populations that made it where the women went and hunt and the men stayed at home. We can acknowledge that these are particular gender roles that's situated in a particular construct. You see what I'm saying? And it's important to acknowledge, to us to ask these questions. These are important questions for us to ask ourselves. When we talk about even the notion of being a real nigga, who taught us that? You feel me? And what gave them the jurisdiction to create the criteria for what it means to be a real nigga? When you think about being a real man, is your notion of being a real man in any way, shape, form, or fashion tied to the colonizer that quote unquote always already was trying to feminize you to justify your brutality and your oppression? Or the ones that tried to paint you as being overly masculine to the point where you're a brute? That big old thing in your pants get hard and you can't even control it. That's how innate your masculinity is fucked up. You see what I'm saying? We've talked about the feminization from the mainstream world, but we know as black men, a lot of times our violence gets justified because we seen it's always already being violent. Just want to put that in there.
Oh, no, I'm definitely going to follow up on that, because here's the thing. We're going to take it alley-oop. So you talking about epistemology, how you identify right from wrong, knowledge production. I learned the same. I call it the taxonomy. I call it the taxonomy of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. So right up under epistemology, you have what? Cosmology. Cosmology is what? How it is that you believe that the universe came to be. Most people's epistemology is rooted in their cosmology, meaning that how it is that you assign or align yourself with the universe spiritually is how it is that you engage in the earthly realm. So what I mean by that is, once again,
no pun intended.
Oh, you feel me? You feel me? In these societies where there was more egalitarian engagement or more strength-based engagement or more matriarchal engagement, you recognize that these societies also had deities or facilitations of God that were female. The idea of God actually came in multiplicity. The deity that was charged with the ability of God or the energy of God did not just exist in one gender expression. It existed in multiple. The humanization of the individual was mirrored in the spirituality of the land. There was no disposal. There was none.
So, go ahead. I don't want to cut you off. You can, but you could.
You feel me? So once again, this is the reason why I have so many conversations with brothers. And when I get them to a point where I'm asking them, where is your foundation? Where is your evidence? Where are you getting this from? Biological, outside of biological essentialism, because that's been disproven many times. Well, in the Bible, So it's your individualized perception and conceptualization of what it is that you've not even read, that you've been spoon-fed. So it's not, once again, you still got somebody else is putting a battery in your back. It's just not a woman. And for shits and giggles, the word pander originally was associated with men who were making accessible things that were not permitted by non-secular institutions. It was pimps.
Swear to God. And that's the thing that blew my mind. It's like, I'm talking about every pimp I know would see you as a square and a potential trick to be finessed and licked on. The fact that you have appropriated this pandering pimp language and you making it as something that is not, I think it's wild. Jay Lethal, I do debates. You see what I'm saying? I do debates. I do debates, structured debates particularly. But before we even get this out, before we end this at all, today there was a video that I played. And I know that you be on social media like I've been on social media, so I'm sure you've probably come across this video. I'm about to play this video, and then we can close this out by talking about the specific relationship that us as Black men, how we're implicated, and what this Black woman just said. And what I want to acknowledge is Huey P. Newton. That's one of the brothers that really taught me, you feel me, masculinity in many ways, or really lit I would say this. Huey P. Newton, the co-founder of the Black Panther Party, when I read his book, Revolutionary Suicide, at 19 years old, that lit the fire under my ass that created consciously. I would tell you that there is no consciously without me being able to learn about Huey P. Newton. See what I'm saying? And what he taught me was to think globally and act locally.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to be showing y'all an analysis from a non-Black American woman making particular claims that still are applicable to us niggas in America that's thinking about this quote unquote gender wars and quote unquote thinking about how we relate to Black women. Man. Anything you want to say before I play this video?
No, go ahead.
I hate men. I hate men who reinforce patriarchy. But that's most men. So now where does that leave us? Because I think the mistake a lot of women be making is like feeling like they have to like constantly disclaim that they don't hate men. I think it's very okay for oppressed people to have resentment towards their oppressor. Let me just make that one clear. Any group of people who are oppressed by another group of people, within that group of oppressed people, there will be some who may have sympathy towards their oppressors. There'll be some in that oppressed group who will have resentment towards their oppressors, and there'll be some in that group who have more of a neutral stance towards their oppressors. Everybody in that group who all feel differently, you guys are allowed to have your feelings. Okay, I'm not here to radicalize anybody because most people don't have the range and they'll never be able to do it how I do it anyway. But we need to hold space for the women who hate men because it's okay to hate people that kill you. I think that sounds fair in my opinion.
Bars. I just think that as a Black man, my grandfather always said only a hit dog holler or only a hit dog house. And when she make those type of analysis, I acknowledge there are going to be a lot of men that operate in male fragility. It's like white people operate when they start hearing analysis about racism and they implicate and they operate in white fragility. So I acknowledge her talking about being able to hold space for women that hate men because she believes that everybody has the ethical right to be able to hate their oppressor. And she acknowledges that she doesn't hate men. She really hates patriarchy. But she acknowledges that most of us. So what does that leave her? What does that leave us as Black men? It's on you, Odie.
I saw a video somewhere. I think it was on the Make It Real Man. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but the woman was on the podcast and she said that a number of men believe that a matriarchy is just a patriarchy inverse, and that's not the case. A matriarchy is a space that is a completely different system of operations where children belong to everybody, where spirit is centered, and where self-esteem, self-worth, and self-value is not attributed to your ability to dehumanize, but it's attributed to your ability to collaborate. We as Black men, in a lot of different ways, need to be courageous enough to deconstruct the patriarchy, which will, once again, make necessary a soul-searching and very often a soul-reinvigorating journey that does not require the dehumanization of yourself or somebody else in order to make you valuable. I try to tell Black men all the time, bro, if you're only concerned about fucking and making money, you are concerned about being the biggest buck or the best slave on the plantation. You need
I don't think it's good to hear that.
I'm about to say, you got to understand your masculinity outside of these, once again, this context of this construct that says that within your Blackness and within your maleness, you are only as good as somebody else says that you are. That's how we begin deconstructing that patriarchy. Because once again, I firmly believe that most Black men only adhere to the patriarchy because we don't have an alternative masculinity to adhere to. And adhering to the patriarchy is safe and it is stabilizing.
Yeah. Plantation patriarchy, man. That's really what you made me think of. Like plantation patriarchy, to me, allows for us to think that the way that we can earn our humanity is by emulating the types of masculinity that we seen on the plantation. And I think that a lot of us get locked into those notions of productivity that make it where we either the buck that can procreate and fuck and make a whole bunch of, you feel me, X, Y, and Z and X, Y, and Z to keep the plantation going, or we're going to be the biggest hustler, biggest picker of cotton to make sure that we are giving value to our bodies. And what I acknowledge as, because capitalism's so insidious, it makes a lot of us Black men believe that we can hustle our way out of white supremacy or hustle our way out of racial oppression. And we don't recognize that it's not your labor that make it where they hate your ass. It's your Blackness. It's your humanity itself. So when you start to spin your wheels in that little hamster wheel, trying to prove that you slanging that wood, enough wood to build you a fence, or you a big enough hustler that you can do anything you want to in this bit, I think that it really makes it where you facilitate what the slave master gave to us, or thinking about that card as you wish in the miseducation of the Negro. Talks about, you feel me, shit. You can condition a person so good that they become a victim of their conditioning becomes conditioned. You make a motherfucker go through the back door long enough, when you give them access to go through the front door, they will find justifications to go through that back door still. And I just think that that's a lot of the ways that I feel like we come to understand our masculinity and understand our manhood, because, hey, I'm only going to be a man unless I can be over somebody. You feel me? And usually the easiest thing to dominate for us as Black men is going to be, hey, man, what men do I think are not as manly as me? Or where are the 9 men for me to prove my manhood on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hey, Danny, go and drop the TikTok, man. I want to end it out on a video to give us something to chew on, man. Danny, go and drop the TikTok in the comments, and I'm gonna go put it in the browser, and we gonna, you know what I'm saying? Because right now, I think that we just letting y'all marinate on the things that we've talked about. But I think we also processing everything that we've said to each other. You see what I'm saying? And thinking about how we going, you know what I'm saying, allow for y'all to end y'all Wednesday nights. Is what it is. This is Wednesday. End y'all Wednesday nights real nice. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man. It's real crazy. It's a crazy conversation, G. But all together, we as Black men, how it is that we are constructing masculinity, how it is that we are defining masculinity in a lot of different ways, is not something that we take enough time to critically question. Where are we getting this masculinity from? Who taught us this? What are we being taught? Why do we have to engage in it in this way? What is the value?
Damn,
right?
Can I copy and paste this mug? Yeah, my bad.
Oh, no, you good. But nah, that's how it is that's formulated, right? We don't ask ourselves these questions. We don't take the time to truly, once again, deconstruct where it is that this concept of Black masculinity, or where it is that Black masculinity in and of itself originates.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Hey, shout out to Danny J. I'm trying to go find your comment right now. I thought I was gonna be able to just easy copy and paste it from the comment section. I think Professor Odie just really gave us some nice words. I am going to screenshot this so I can copy and paste it for us and see this video that Danny talking about. That's very much to this topic we're talking about. You know what I'm saying? We gonna get this copied and pasted up in here, and we're gonna react and be on our way. Let's see. Shout out to everybody that's here. I genuinely appreciate y'all for being a part of this conversation. I acknowledge that y'all could be a million. Oh wow, what I do? Hold on. I put it in wrong. The link ain't hold on. Make sure I got the whole thing. The link ain't. It's saying it can't find the page. I just copied and pasted. I don't know, so we ain't gonna be able to get to the video. I apologize. It say we can't. It can't find it. I was trying to pull the video up for us to respond to and react to that video, man. Let people know though where to find you at. You know what I'm saying? Where to subscribe to? How can they book you for your services? What to be on the lookout for you? I know that you did your thing so much in this video, black man, that I'm positive there's gonna be individuals that watch this mug on the playback and think like, damn, I gotta go find with this man to go make sure I get some more of whatever he producing and putting down. You know what I'm saying? So just let us know where to find you at, the website, the services you provide, what projects we can look out on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Most definitely. So good people, great people, guys, people. If you don't know, my name is Professor Odie. I am a master's level pre-licensed therapist in the state of Pennsylvania. I am also an emotional intelligence and emotional regulation coach. Where you can find me on most platforms is Professor.Odie or Professor_Odie. Either one of those things usually work. I also have a podcast called The Antidote that's hosted on YouTube. So once again, if you go on YouTube, type in Professor Odie, you'll be able to find me there as well. Where it is that you can book my services. If you follow me on Instagram, you click my link tree. All of my services are there. I do one-on-one emotional health and wellness coaching. I also do traditional therapy for people who are staying in the state of Pennsylvania. I have ebooks. I have an e-learning platform where I walk you through multiple modules that will teach you how to engage in emotional regulation so that you can increase your quality of life and have better relationships with yourself and other people. And yeah, G, that's pretty much where you can find me at.
Yeah, man. Hey, shout out to you, Robin. I'm definitely looking forward to trying to come to Orlando. My manager and the team definitely looking forward to the email. You feel me? The consciously.com is where you can go. I got merch on there. Hoodies coming. That's where you feel me. If you want to book me for a facilitation or a workshop or a keynote, you know, or doing some type of consulting, that's where you can find that at. I really appreciate everybody that's tuned in, especially that made it this far. If there's any part of this conversation that you think that other people should hear, or you think that, you know what I'm saying, should be shared, please share it. Please make sure that people hear it. Education is elevation. You feel me? Research of a me search. Hey, stay sucker free in the land of lollipops and make sure you recognize the folks that's always trying to finesse their licks. Unconsensually too, goddamn. Stay sucker free in the land of lollipops for real. Education is elevation, man. And I'm out.
Spontaneous percussion.